previous life, and my previous life was very full on. It was completely different to my current life. I think of it fondly still, and I think I always will, and I think eventually I may even return to that life. So I thought I would tell you a bit about what I did. I am currently being kind of normal and being a grown-up, and that's difficult for me for many reasons, largely because I struggle just to kind of get through the day, because my brain works slightly differently to most people's, as I have told you about previously. Now, I'm in a holiday cottage right now, which is why the background looks different, and I do not have leather sofas because obvious reasons. I'm a vegan. That is not something that we do. But back to the subject in hand. I used to do music, and I hope that in the future I will also return to doing music again, because it feels like a piece of my heart is missing right now. It's been such a massive part of my life from when I was really small. When I was born, my mum was teaching piano and guitar, so there was lots of music going on around in the house already from day one, and I picked up on that, as you do. And my mum was also a teacher at my primary school. I was in her class. It was awful because obviously she didn't want to show favouritism, so she kind of did reverse favouritism, and I got told off for talking a lot. And so I also did lots of music at school. She played the piano, and I always had to stand up and sing stuff to teach it to other people. So I learned how to sing when I was very little. And then when I was about 7, my mum said, right, you can play an instrument. What instrument do you want to play? And I chose the violin. And I can't remember why that was, but I loved it. And I practiced every single day, and I progressed really well, and it kind of just took over my life, doing music every spare second that I had. Every weekend I went to a local music club on a Saturday morning that kind of went through from 9 till 1, 2 o'clock. And I did that every year until I was about 21. So a long time. I think I was the longest serving member. And when I was old enough, at secondary school, I also started singing in a proper choir, so had to audition to go and be a soprano. And I sang like a boy, like a choir boy. I still do. That's kind of still what my voice sounds like. I'll put some music of me singing behind this video so you'll be able to hear what I sound like. And it was perfect for choral singing, so I auditioned, I got into this choir, and I absolutely loved it. I learned how to sight sing. I already knew how to read music from playing the violin, and I could sight read playing the violin, so I could just play the music from the page. I was in a youth orchestra, and then I joined a much bigger youth choir, and it was my entire social life was based around music, as well as everything that I did in my spare time was practicing the violin. I spent a lot of time as a kid alone in a classroom after school because my mum was in staff meetings and we always hung around till like 5, 6 o'clock. So I had a lot of time spent alone with a piano, and I used to make up film scores basically, which is kind of funny when I think about that now, because as we'll see later in the story, quite a lot of my music has been in films and on TV. So it was something that was in my life from before I can really remember anything, and I loved listening to music. I loved classical music. I played the Suzuki method on the violin, which is just a method of teaching where it had the violin part and then the piano accompaniment, and the idea was that you would learn to play it by ear. So it developed the musical ear very young, and I was very good at that. So for singing in tune and recognising my part was just, it came very naturally to me. We played the recorder, so we had to play lots of different parts in that. I remember there was one concert where we had a recorder consort group, and I was one of them, and something happened, I can't remember why, but I laughed down my recorder and it made a big squeaking noise. If anyone remembers playing recorders, those plastic recorders when you were a kid, you might understand what I'm talking about. So yeah, everything that I did revolved around music. At secondary school I was bullied quite seriously bullied, and it's one of the reasons that I've had issues with my mental health ever since. Just one of a few things that affected me quite deeply on an emotional level. And literally the only way that I had to escape what was going on at school was to go into our music room. And it was like stepping from one world where I was bottom of the pile to suddenly being in a space where it was like it was my kingdom. I was the person that was most invested in music. I loved it the most. I did the most of it. I was buddies with our music teacher, who was an amazing, amazing man, who had so much time for me and was so supportive and so encouraging that we could just go into the music room and hang around, and the bullies didn't come in there because it was no interest to them. So it was like a little sanctuary for those of us who were involved in doing music at school and who didn't really like what was going on outside that door. So after GCSEs and we went to sixth form college, a guy showed up who was an organist, and he played with us for some Christmas stuff, and I sang, because singing carols was quite a big part of what we did every Christmas. It was all about the music, singing in cathedrals, Wells Cathedral, which is very near where I grew up. I used to sing the solo for once in Royal David City, processing down the aisle, and there would be 500 parents in all these other schools, and I was the one that got chosen to sing the solo as we walked down with these candles. It was one of the most amazing moments of my life, just that deathly silence in such a huge building, and all I could hear was my own voice kind of projecting up, and the acoustics were allowing it to fill the entire building. It was really a surreal moment, and something that I can remember what that felt like even now. It was amazing. So this organist guy came to college and he offered me a scholarship to the Kodai school in Hungary, which is one of the most famous music schools there is. And he said, come and sing, move to Hungary, come and sing at the Kodai school, it will be a free scholarship, but you'll be there on your own, you don't speak the language, you won't be able to watch TV, you won't have your family just down the road. Well, he didn't say all this to me, but this was that was the deal. And at the time, I'd just met this bunch of guys who were in a band and they wanted a backing singer. And I liked a lot of music, so not just classical music. I loved Nirvana. I was the hugest Nirvana fan. This was like when it was happening at the time, when Kurt was still alive. There were so many punk bands that I loved, and so many metal bands that I loved, and just a load of everything from Fleetwood Mac through to Elastica. I suppose that doesn't sound too far removed, but if you think about going over every single genre in between. And I really wanted to be in a band. I'd done a couple of gigs where I was singing solo for the jazz band at school and at college, and getting up on stage, we had a big theatre that was in the town where I'm from, and the school and the college kind of backed onto the theatre, so we always got to use that space for performances. And I remember the jazz band all being on the stage and I was waiting in the wings, and then when I came on, the spotlight followed me and people applauded, and it was just an amazing feeling. I still have this weird reaction whenever I hear applause. It makes tears come out of my eyes. It's a very bizarre thing, and it's obviously quite embarrassing to not burst into tears, but for your eyes to start watering just because people are applauding. That feeling was just amazing. And I got to sing solo on that stage quite a lot of times, because whenever there was a singing part that went above a certain note, it was always given to me, because that just was my thing, that's what I did. So I was thinking about the idea of wanting to get up on a stage and be in a band, you know, like be cool, be rock and roll. And this was when I was about 16, so by the time I was 17 I had got involved with this band. I remember turning up to the first rehearsal in my friend's beaten up old Mini. We'd gone out to one of the local farms and pulled up outside a barn, walked into this barn with hay down the side because there had been cattle in there at night time, and they had all their kit set up and the PA and guitars and stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is it, I've arrived. So I got this offer of this scholarship to a music school, and I couldn't do it. I wanted to do rock and roll a lot more at that time, and obviously being a teenager, having just come out of school, finally I didn't have to see those bullies every day. I could do whatever I wanted. I was my own person. I could reinvent myself, and I fitted in fine at college. Things were completely different, so I didn't have any of this stuff. So I didn't go. I didn't take the place. I don't think I regret that decision, but I do sometimes wonder what could have been. Where would I be now if I had gone? And I feel a bit silly sometimes that I turned down such an amazing offer, because it really doesn't happen to everyone, and it's not something I'll ever get the chance to do again. So I joined a band, and we did a load of local gigs. I met my husband when he was a fan of my band. He used to come and watch us play. There was a lot of crappy local venues that we loved, and they loved us, and there weren't many girls in bands, so I was kind of a novelty. I've talked about this a bit in my special snowflake sexism video, which I'll link in this part of the video, so you can see some of the funny sexist experiences I have had from being a woman in the band circuit, especially on a local level. In total, I ended up doing 15 years in bands. We used to travel, we used to go around Europe in various beaten up old transit vans. We did so much of the UK, endless tours of the UK, and it was all self-funded. We did shows where we drove from Somerset to London just to play for half an hour, and then got straight back in the van and drove back to be at work the next day. The kind of stuff that you can do when you're young and you can't do when you're the age I am now, because you just need your 10 hours sleep for me. There was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of misbehaving, there was a lot of breakups. I dated the guy in the band with me for a long time, and then we carried on the band after we broke up, and it was kind of all cool. It was just amazing fun. I enjoyed it. I did moan about it a lot at the time because we were tired and we were hungover, and we had to pay all of our hard-earned cash was spent on travelling and putting out our own records. We did a lot of DIY vinyl single releases. We did a couple on labels as well, but they were just small labels, so we didn't ever sign to a big major label. We got close a few times. We had a lot of meetings with labels, and you had to have the exact recipe that they were looking for at that time. They would already have an idea in their minds of what it was they wanted to put out next, and if you weren't that, it wasn't going to be you. So we just never got lucky with that. But it pretty much took over my entire life. So I worked as well. Most of us worked full time, and we did this in all of our weekends. We rehearsed all of our evenings. We gigged. Any other time we spent writing and recording stuff, all very DIY. It was loads of fun, and I met so many people that are friends for life now. A few I don't see anymore for various reasons. I think a lot of creative people suffer with their mental health quite a lot, because creativity is an outlet for your emotions in some way. So if you're feeling that you need to express that a lot, it kind of suggests that there's a lot going on there. And they say there's a fine line between madness and genius, and I think that's definitely true for music. Music can transform my entire mood, and I love to use it to do that. And it is a soundtrack to your life, really. You remember the moments you listen to certain music. Every time I hear something I know from years ago, I'm immediately transported back to that moment in time, and I can remember it so clearly when sometimes I can't even remember what happened yesterday or what I did this morning. I guess it's the kind of thing your grandparents tell you and you're like, yeah, whatever, old man, and then when it starts to happen you're like, maybe I'm kind of old now. And eventually I'd kind of dropped out of college the first time I went. I did really badly. I wasn't very well mentally. and I'd chosen the wrong subjects, and it all went a bit tits up. So I went back and tried again, and I did music technology, and I loved it. It was brilliant. We had a studio, we learned how to use computers to make music. When the band broke up, or when it kind of petered out, I thought I would try and write a requiem, a choral requiem, because that was the style I was used to singing when I was singing in choirs, and I'd really missed it. I'd briefly, when I was at university, sung for the London Bach Choir. There's a link to a Daily Mail article that will be relevant. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I've been singing with this choir, who were professional choir. We didn't get paid to be in it, but we got paid to do things like singing on film soundtracks. So I sang on the soundtrack to the first Narnia film. And there's another one called Kingdom of Heaven, a couple of big Hollywood movies. It was a very serious choir, and I loved that as well, but I didn't feel like I was really allowed to use my creativity there, because obviously it's all music that's already been written. So I thought I'll write a requiem, and I just sat down with a laptop in my kitchen when I was particularly emotionally all over the place, and I just kind of, an album just came out, and people really seemed to like it. I couldn't really play it live because it involved lots more instruments, and I recorded my own voice for lots of different harmonies, as hopefully you're hearing in the background right now. Wasn't expecting the response that I got, and it'd been floating around on MySpace for a while. I did do a couple of gigs with some local people later on, but before that had happened, I'd met someone online who had a studio in Los Angeles, and who'd got in touch and said to come out and work with me here. So I just flew to Los Angeles for 2 weeks on my own and met David, who is the sweetest man. He's just lovely, and he really sparked my creativity. So we wrote 2 tracks together and recorded them, and it was just amazing. I felt like I'd finally found my calling. Then after that album just really took off. I mean, it wasn't out on a major label. I put it out myself. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes. People listened to it. People wanted to know if I was playing it live. It got used for some stuff on TV. And then off the back of that, I got an album, a library commission, which is you are asked to write a certain number of tracks in a certain time around a kind of genre and a theme, and you write them and you send them to the label, and they ask you to make changes sometimes or not, and then they go into a library of music that people can pay to license for film and TV. So my first commissioned album, I wrote that, I recorded that, I produced it, and it's out there now. And then I wrote a third album, and I finished that in 2013, and again I put it out myself. I did have a publishing deal for a while where a publishers owned the rights to my music, and they were supposed to get it used in film and TV, but they didn't really. They were a new company and they'd signed up too many things, I think, and they just couldn't put the time into everyone's stuff. But through doing all of that in a very roundabout way, I got a phone call from someone asking me if I could do string arrangements, because they'd heard some of the stuff that I'd been doing for the Requiem, and they thought that I had a clue about orchestral music. So I said, yeah, that's fine, I can come and do an orchestration. So I went and orchestrated this track that was used on an Adidas commercial for the Football World Cup in Brazil in 2010. And then they asked me to write one for the second round of commercials. These were the ones that were played in the ad breaks of the World Cup. And that was my first big commissioned writing to brief, really, that went out there, and I worked with loads of musicians. Wrote the whole thing, orchestrated it all. The guy who played drums on the Star Wars soundtracks came and played drums for me. My friend Arisa from Guillemot, she came and played double bass for me. Raven Quartet, who you may remember, one of them, Natalie, was the woman that threw eggs at Simon Cowell on the stage in the X Factor that one time. So quite a random selection of people have played on the album, but I didn't have any money to promote anything. I didn't have any money. I played a few shows, but I had so many people in the orchestra that I'd had to pay them all out of my own pocket, and I don't like musicians to work for me for free, so I made sure that I paid them. Just meant I couldn't do very many gigs. The biggest gig that I did was supporting Devon Townsend in a chapel in London, and there were 700 people there who sat in silence in the dark whilst I performed my set. And again, the same feeling I got as a kid when I was out on that stage with the spotlight on me, just singing and listening to it all floating around the room. Such an amazing feeling. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a solo artist. I wanted to put myself out there. I had loads of meetings with different labels, major labels, and they just didn't really know where to put me. I was a classical musician, singing like a boy, but being a fully grown woman with lots of tattoos. And I don't think they really saw where my niche would be. Unfortunately, it's all about timing in the music world, so if you're not what they're looking for right at that moment, you don't get a look in. And then after that, I was just about to start properly going freelance. I've been doing teaching at universities, I've been lecturing in music, I'd been working with vulnerable young people, writing songs with them, doing production with them, and I love doing all those things, and that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to continue to write as a solo artist. But then the London riots happened, my house got burnt down. I will make another video about this, don't worry, because it's a weird thing to just chuck into the video. That kind of scuppered my plans. I lost a few jobs because I didn't have any instruments, I had nothing to do music with. And we didn't have a house to live in either, we were homeless, so a lot of stuff happened and it just didn't work out, and I had to get a full-time job, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I had my son and I just couldn't spend time locked away in a little room at home with all my computers and pianos and stuff, because I had a child to look after. So I think that's why I'm hoping that in the future I will write a fourth album and be able to put it out and maybe work a bit harder on the live side of things. It's been such an up and down journey, but I just can't ever imagine a time in my life where I won't want to do music. It's literally saved me from myself a lot of times, and I've met so many amazing people. I've sung with amazing people, I've been in bands with amazing people, I've worked with some of the people that have been responsible for the tunes that we all know and love, and I've been really lucky in that. It's very strange to think back through all of those experiences, because it is such a sort of strange assortment of oddities. But I guess I just wanted people to have an idea of the life that I've come from, where I am now, and one of the things that makes me tick is music, and I love it. I'm always open to working with new people, but I'd invite you, if you watch my channel and you enjoy it, or you enjoy hearing from me for whatever reason, go check the music out, go and have a listen, let me know what you think. I'd really love to get it started again, so it would be great to have your support for that. So there we have it, my musical life in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will try to do more. I am terrible, I do know this.
Killer on the boy, 'cause I wanna point it. Killer on the boy with the flashpoint pen. Tell me I'm the crow with the eyes of the violence. Tell me I'm the crow with the panther to the witchcraft. of the shallow defeat.